Hey guys, it's Kat and I'm back today for another sort of first impressions and then following it on and seeing how I go over a few days of using this palette. So I did this with my Pat McGrath palette where I originally just wanted to see what I think about it as I use it, and then because I was a bit confused about what I thought about it, I kept checking in and people liked seeing that. So it's sort of like my first impressions as I use this palette for a week or so. So I'm going to do this with my NATASHA Denona. This is the gold palette. So I sort of bought this as a knee-jerk reaction because I wanted a really special sort of palette, and because I personally didn't think the Pat McGrath one was as impressive as I expected it to be. I was like, bugger it, treat yourself, get this one. And so this is the most recent one from NATASHA Denona. It is like a follow-on from like the Sunset palette, the Lila palette, or the I think it was Lila. So it's the same sort of format, and it is limited edition. So if you did like it, you can get it from NATASHA Denona, you can get it from Beautylish, which is where I got it from, and I think you can get it from Sephora in the US as well. I'm not sure if or when it's coming to Australia Sephora, but that's, yeah, I got it off Beautylish. So keep on watching if you want to see how I got this look and what shades I used, the swatches of the palette, and what I sort of think after using it once. And then I will keep checking back in while using other shades and showing you the looks I created and what I think about the whoa, you scared me, Dirtles. All right, guys, so I am going to open this beauty up. I don't know if it's beauty. It could be crap. Hopefully it's a beauty. So this is black packaging. As you can see, it's got gold accents. It is the gold palette. It does have 15 eyeshadows, 2.5 grams each, so a pretty decent sized eyeshadow. I think MAC eyeshadows are 2 grams, so a bit bigger than a MAC individual. We can see details there. Most shades have different ingredients, and that's one thing I've noticed about NATASHA Denona. They always change the formula, and then you end up having palettes that all have completely different formulas. Now, if they all work, that's totally fine, but that's where you can get inconsistencies across palettes, and that is a big problem with NATASHA Denona, or NATASHA Denona, when she does a boo-boo. I just want to say that's kind of cool. It's got the black and gold is really nice, especially since it's like the matte black. And then the palette, which I've only looked at once, oh, that's very reflective. You can see how reflective it is. That is my rug that I'm currently sitting on. Can we see the cat? Can you see the cat on the balcony? Bugsy. We can see you, Bugsy. I can see you. It does have quite a firm magnetic closure, so yeah, these are sort of like foam. They're not cardboard, which I like. So I feel like cardboard has an almost cheaper feel to it. Like if you get it wet, it's gonna warp. Whereas I feel like, at least with the foam and it being lightweight and pretty thin and pretty compact and sturdy, I can feel like this is both a consumer product and sort of a makeup artist product. So it does feel like it's quite durable. I think that's the word I want, durable. You open it up and it's got a flap that's got the names on it, and then also a mirror, and you can just easily lift up the flap to, it's perforated as well, so you can remove it if you don't want it. And I think that's a good move because if you really like this particular palette, but you want to sort of custom make your own shades in there, you can actually remove these pans so that you can depot them very easily, and then you can swap them around with other NATASHA Denona pans if you have them. So having this sort of not permanently on the pan makes sense in this instance, but yeah, those are the colors there. Okay, so the reason why I liked this palette was because it is mainly sort of warm browns and golds with a pop of sort of turquoise. This is a duochrome. I don't know if you can see, but it looks kind of brown in one light and then it sort of looks green in another. So this reminds me a lot of some of the shades in her brown green palette that I have, or green brown palette that I've had for years. And you can definitely see that the shades have different formulas, because I'm not sure if you can see, but that dark turquoise matte is quite shallow in the pan and it looks like it's pressed a lot differently. I'm going to show you zoomed in. Just have a look at this matte versus this matte. They're very, very different. I don't know if you can see that this one is very textured, and it's very shallow in the pan compared to this, which is almost overflowing in the pan, and you can't see the texture to it as much. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that properly. I'm also holding this upside down, so that's technically the bottom, that's technically the top, but you can see the colors there. In the sort of promotional photos, this looked like it had a lot less variety in it, but I can see here that these are more bronze, these are more sort of typical warm browns. You've got some more metallic shades here, some more interesting sort of shades here, so more of what would this be, like a mustard brown? That is more of a traditional tan actually. And then you have sort of like the special colors here. So there is a lot more variety in this than I actually thought there would be. Now I am actually going to apply this today and then of course try other shades and check in over the next week. I won't use this exclusively because I do my 1 month, 1 palette. So over the next week, I'll try to use all the shades and check in every time I use it and sort of what I'm thinking as I use the palette. But today I sort of really want, firstly, this shade really talks to me, this mustard. I've been looking for a good shade like this for a long time. I love a sort of mustard browny kind of, I like those swampy greens and like army greens and mustard yellows. I think they're beautiful. So I love that they've got one here. I wish there was like a swampy green here. It would have been really good. So I might use this, and I want to go for more of a sort of basic eye today. I'm thinking maybe this sort of bronze and maybe a deeper color because I am going for a dark lip. So I'm going to go for a dark glossy lip, and I want something that looks cool but isn't super, super over the top. And because I am a little bit over the top, I might use this duochrome shade because that is beautiful. So I'm thinking maybe something like using those and then, you know, deepening with maybe that and just having a play, and then I'll swatch them. So up and close, I'm going to use the NARS. This is the tinted eyeshadow base in light. Yep, I'm just going to use that on my eyes. And I'm just using a Sigma blending brush to blend that out. All right, so I'm going in with this shade here, which is called Dijon. I get it, it's mustard. Let's use that on a really fluffy brush. This is a Morphe something. Morphe M504, that's what that is. Okay, let's see how it goes on an unset base because they can stick and tug. See how that's sort of making those lines? It's because I haven't set this, but this is blending quite nicely considering. So yeah, better to set the crease so you get a smooth application, but you know, you can work around it if need be, especially with like mattes that blend pretty well, which this one seems to be. Yeah, so if you're having issues with it sort of clinging and tugging to one area, just set your base because the problem is that it sort of sticks to the sticky base and then doesn't really want to move. But you know, if you have a decent matte, you can generally just blend it out. But if you have that trouble, just try setting your base with like just a matte nude color first and it will blend a lot nicer. All right, I'm just gonna leave that there for now because I want to, while the base is still a little bit sticky on the lid, I want to put some shimmer on. And I'm going in with Alchemist, which is this shade here, which, you know, ironically, my tattoo is Full Metal Alchemist. So I like the name Alchemist. I'm using that one. And I'm just using the brush that I used to apply the primer. It picks up quite nicely, which is good. I like eyeshadows that aren't difficult to apply. Okay, so this does pick up reasonably well and applies reasonably well, but you know, you'd get a better result with more of a flat packing brush. And people often ask me, why do you use brushes like this to put on product? And the answer is because I like to. I find that they put on product. You can sort of build them up instead of it being like way too intense. And I think that it sort of blends as you go. As long as you just use the flat side and not the tip and you're not blending, you're just sort of packing, I think these work really well. So a lot of people like to complain about that, but you do you and let me do me. Okay, so I am thinking that this does need to be built up a lot. Like if you want a really sort of intense application, you do sort of want to build it up a bit, but that is a pretty shimmer shade. And I'm just going to apply some with my finger so you can see how intense it can get. So it can get pretty nice and intense. So it's definitely gold. It's definitely gold. And this is not the most gold shade in the palette either. So if you want more gold, you can get even more gold. I actually don't mind shades that you can apply like this where it's a little bit more sheer and then you can build them up, because then they just become a little bit more versatile. So if you want to apply them wet or over a glitter glue, you can make them really foiled. Otherwise, if you want them a bit softer, you can make them a bit softer. Okay, I'm just blending that out a little bit more with that mustard on that same brush that I used to put it in the crease to begin with, so that really fluffy Morphe brush. I'm just blending that out a little bit. Those two colors actually work really well together. They sort of just look like an extension of each other, which is nice because then you get like a pretty nice looking blend. And these are nice, like they're nicely pigmented, the mattes, but well, this particular matte, but you can get a nice soft blend, which is good. I find some mattes are really pigmented and they cling to skin too much, whereas I find that this, you can sort of blend it nice and softly without too much of a problem. I'm blending this really high and it's looking very sort of extreme. Usually if I blend too high and I don't really like it, I just use a sort of cream color to sort of take it back down, but there's none in this palette, so I'm going to leave it for now. Also, if you're wondering, this sort of looks a bit patchy out here. That is just my skin, not the actual eyeshadow. Okay, on the lower lash line, I'm using this Sigma, what is this called? Short shader. And I'm going to actually use this shade here. So it's called Lime Chrome and it's that duochrome shade. We're just gonna see how it applies. Mind you, the lower lash line, I never put primer on. I probably should for this because I can see that this is looking gorgeous. It's just not really sticking to the skin. So it probably, look at the color. It's like, it's beautiful. It's got a sort of, I don't know, tan nude base, but then it's got a bit of a like green micro shimmer to it. It's really pretty, but it's not packing on intensely because I'm just using it on bare skin. Okay, I want to take that up a bit because it's a really pretty color and it adds sort of, it looks like a bit of a topper. It adds a bit of dimension to the look. This is sort of what I wanted. Not so much like this. I sort of wanted a more intense version, but not like a flaky glitter version in the Pat McGrath palette, but I didn't get it. So this is sort of a similar concept where it's a duochrome that you can put as a topper, but this one is a little bit more subdued. I sort of wanted a little bit more than this from the Pat McGrath and a little bit less flaky than what I got. So I'm just putting some of this on with my finger. Okay, I wanted this look not to be super intense, but it's proving to be quite intense. Okay, there was part of me that wanted to use this teal color. Oh, I still sort of want to use it. Maybe I will. On the lower lash line, I'm going to use some of this shade, which is Log, and I'm using it with that short brush that I used the shimmer with. The mattes do pick up a lot better than these sort of duochromes. So these are a lot softer, but you know, that's sort of to be expected. I'm just blending that out with that tapered brush without any product on it because it is very pigmented. Like it blends well, but you deposit a lot. Okay, you probably can't see it very well, but that mix of that dark brown and that lime duochrome color is really pretty. It just, they sort of set each other off a bit and it looks really gorgeous. All right, I was going to incorporate some of that matte teal, but I've decided to go with that Log Brown because I feel like I wanted a pretty basic look today. And when you start playing with a palette, you just start going crazy. And then you're like, no, I actually have to rein it back. I can use the teal tomorrow. So yeah, I'm going to just use that Log color just to deepen the outer corner, as you can see. And I was going to do that with teal. I won't. I'll do it another time. All right, in honor of the teal that I didn't use, I'm going to actually use a teal liner on the lash line. I think it's going to make the browns sort of pop against each other. This is by Rimmel and it is the, what is it? Cream Gel Liner in something. Private Island. It's in Private Island. I think it's a beautiful way to just add like a little pop of color to a look. Then I'm going to use my sample of the Benefit Their Wheel. This is like a primer for your lashes. It's brown. I'm using it in my project pan, but what I like about it is that it really separates the lashes. You can use this just on its own, but oh, I should have curled my lashes, damn it. Yeah, I don't often use like a lash primer, but I find that this one, like I said before, it's a really good way to sort of really separate those lashes and get right into the roots of them before you put on like a heavier coat that if you apply too much, it can sort of clump. So I'm actually not minding this step. I'm using this sort of to use it up, but I have been enjoying the effects of it. So that's good. And if you want like a low makeup day, this is good as a brown mascara. All right, then I am using the Steeler. This is a sample of the Huge Extreme Lash Mascara. I really like this. It does give quite huge extreme lashes. But if you apply too much, it can clump, which is why I like the primer with it. All right, that is the final eye look. It is, I feel like I need to blend some cream here to bring that back down. I might get a cream eyeshadow. All right, this is just a Wet n Wild single in Creme Brûlée, and I'm just going to blend out that sort of mustard color a bit more. On camera, I think you can't see how far up I've taken it, but in person, you definitely can. So I'm just sort of toning that down just a little bit. All right, so this eye look I'm pretty happy with. It's probably a bit more extreme than I expected, but that happens often. And I think the mattes were nice to blend out. I think the duochrome color, even though it took a bit to put on, it's very, very effective, and it sort of transforms even the dark shade that I've got under here. I think this shimmery bronze is pretty. I did need to put it on with my finger, so it would work better with a sticky base or, you know, a firmer brush or a wet brush, but I think it's a nice effect. All right, and the reason why I wanted to not go too extreme with the eyes is because I want to use like a really dark lip. These are just by Bobbi Brown. This is not a review for Bobbi Brown, but they've got a new Luxe range, and I've tried one of the items and I sort of want to try another one. These are some lipsticks that I haven't tried, but you can see that they have released, and this sort of confused me, but it made sense once I figured it out. The sort of frosted lid are matte products, and then the shiny lid are like lacquer finish products. I used the matte one yesterday. This is very comfortable. It's very beautiful. This is in the shade. So it's a Luxe Liquid Lip Velvet Matte in Your Magesty. Whereas I thought today I want to go a bit vampier and a bit shinier, which is a bit OTT, but this is a Luxe Liquid Lip High Shine in Wild Orchid, and I thought, look, I want to try it. I want to try it. I can say as well that yesterday this stained, so I've still got a little bit of pink on my lips from it, so it lasts a long time. But let's try this one. Let's try this really bold one. The pigmentation is gorgeous. All of a sudden when I put a dark lip on, I look really pale, but this is really pretty. All right, I'm gonna swatch this bugger so you can see all the shades, and then I'm going to keep playing with it over the next week or so and check in and let you know how I'm going with using this. All right, let's go first row, and we'll start with that lime chrome shade where we're doing it here. So you can see there that it's got that sort of orangey tan base and that green shift, green yellow shift. Depending on what you put it with, it sort of looks more blue or more green or more yellow, depending on the color you put it over. And then we have that green shade, which is a matte. This is Python. This is, I think, more one of those baked gel sort of shades. It looks super pigmented. I'm really bummed I didn't use it. It looks gorgeous. It's not your traditional matte, that is for sure. Then we've got Sparks, which looks like it could be a topper shade where it transforms the shades. Let's just have a look. Let's do an experiment. Let's just tap some on here. Doesn't really do much. It just adds a bit of sparkle to it. But that's a nice refined glitter, more of a, you know, everyday wearable glitter. All right, well, then we've got a matte called Aria. This is sort of like a beautiful, this reminds me a lot of, oh shit, what was it in the Too Faced Original Chocolate Bar palette? There was a beautiful shade that, Salted Caramel, I think it was, that a lot of people loved. It's almost got a peachy, rosy brown to it. It's beautiful. Then we have another sparkle called Cava, I think, C-A-V-A. That is beautiful as well. So that is, yeah, it's got no base color, so it is just a sparkle, but it's in a nice sort of, hang on. It looks like it's got a mixture of bronze and silver micro glitter in there. So once again, that you could probably blend out. Hang on, I'm gonna test it. You can blend it out and it looks just more like a wash of sparkle. They're quite pretty. I don't know if you can see, but right on an angle, this lime one actually looks pink. I don't know if you can see that, but I noticed that. It was interesting. It sort of goes a pinky color. All right, next row, look at these babies. We have first off Aurora, which is like it's got a blackened base with a teal kind of color over the top. I'm just gonna pack this on a little bit more, but definitely looks a little bit more blackened than it looks in the pan. In the pan, it looks quite vibrant and teal, but this actually is quite more muted. You can layer that over things, so I'll have a play with that. We've got Dijon, which is that shade that I used to blend out. That looks a lot more bold when you swatch it, but it is a nicely blendable shade. Then we have Oro, which is fucking, oh my god, that is the most gold in the palette, the most true gold shade. And I want to mention that when I swatch them, I just sort of go 1, 2 like that. I don't actually go I don't destroy the palette. I'll show you the post swatched palette, because I've noticed NATASHA Denona tends to swatch these and she really like messes up the palette to get a nice swatch. That was not messing up the palette. That was just beautiful. All right, then we have Log, which is sort of like a cool toned dark brown. It's a nice color. It worked well. And this is Varus or Verus. That is beautiful. Okay, that is my sort of everyday, like sort of bronzy brown color. That looks really, really nice. I do find that these shimmers, from the vibe I'm getting to begin with, they apply better with the fingers, so I'll sort of see how they apply with brushes as I wear them. All right, last row. The first one we have is like a flaky glitter. So this one is called Brass. This reminds me a little bit of that Carver shade that we saw on the first row. So, oh my God, that is different. That is like a foiled shade. That is crazy. Why wasn't I wearing that today? What the heck? I'm looking forward to trying this. That is intense. That was not applied wet, that was just applied with my finger. Then we have whatever this one is. It's not even important anymore because that is there. No, this is called Sandstone, and it's very similar to the other one that we tried. I might compare Aria to that soon. And then we have Alchemist, which is what I was wearing. This one is probably the least impressive of the shimmers. Like, it works fine, but compared to the other ones, this, yeah, I'm curious to see how they apply, because this one definitely needed to apply it wet or with your finger or something like that to make it really bold, but it applies quite nicely just with a brush, but it doesn't get that intense just on its own. But fucking hell, what is that? Look at it. All right, last two, we have Teak, which is a brown. You can see that it is slightly different to that one. This one is probably a little bit more, I don't know, it's got a little bit more red in it. It's a little bit deeper. This looks a little bit more yellow. And then we have, what was this one? I think this is Aurum or Arum. And that is just more of, it looks quite similar to this. Once again, a little bit more yellow, and it's not glittery. This has glitter in it. This just looks like a shimmer. So that one looks like you can sort of blend it out and make it a little bit more sheer. So it does have a different finish. If you know, you could look at this and be like, they're all the same, but they do all have different finishes. And if you do like these sort of shades, you will like all of these, which I do. But this is, I don't know, this is like speaking to God. All right, and I've got the three sort of transition colors here. We've got Aria, which is on the top row, which is sort of a bit rosier. Then we have Sandstone, which looks similar. I'm going to get a little bit more. This is similar, but a little bit more yellow, I guess. And then we have Teak, which is sort of like this one, but darker. They are very similar. Like, if you like these shades, you will see the nuances, but they are very similar. All right, and this is the post-swatched palette. So you can see that I didn't dig into them too much. It does disrupt them. That was that glorious one that I used at the end that I'm like, oh my God, I need to use it. I need to use it soon. It's calling my name. These are the similar ones I was talking about. And also, I don't know if you can see here, but I went in to re-swatch it and I had a little bit of residue from the makeup wipe on my finger and it sealed the pan slightly. So do be careful that the mattes do seal. So it's not a problem. It's not gonna mess up the palette, but yeah, you don't wanna get wet brushes on the mattes. All right, so far I do like this palette. I don't know if you can see where that shifts pink, but it does. In some lights it shifts pink and then it's like green and then it's like, it's crazy. But this shade here that swatches like a butter, I really want to try that. I really want to try this shade too. I do like the diverse like finishes in here. You've got some glitter toppers, you've got some really intense glitters, you've got some basic metallics. These are sort of basic metallics. The mattes all do feel really, really nice and soft and blendable, but we'll have to see how they apply. And I'm gonna make some basic looks with this. I'm gonna make some more crazy looks with this. We'll see how I go, shall we? All right guys, it is day 2 of wearing this palette, and today I decided to go quite a simple eye look because I'm wearing quite a bold lip. Update from yesterday, that Bobbi Brown like glossy lip product wore so well. I loved it. I loved it so much that I actually went to David Jones, bought this matte orange version, and then also bought a glossy nude one. So that's how much I loved it. And that's what I'm wearing today. One of the Bobbi Brown, I think it was called, I think it's called Blood Orange, whatever. I really like them. Anyway, so because I knew I was going to wear this, I wanted to tone down the eyes a little bit. So I'm wearing 2 shades from this palette. And I am wearing this sort of traditional shimmer. So it's just a brown shimmer, and also this shade here, which reminds me, like I said yesterday, of the Too Faced Salted Caramel. That's what it is. And they applied really, really well. This one applied a lot better than Alchemist. So I think it's because this one has more sort of sparkle in it. It's more of a sort of foiled, chunkier shade. So this is better to apply. If you want a nice smooth sort of finish, it's better to apply with your fingers or even wet. Whereas this one is more of a traditional shimmer and just applied with a normal brush super easily. It looks really nice. It's just a basic brown eye look, but I really like it. It's the kind of shades that I wear every day. Oh, one thing I did want to point out was I was trying to use the mirror and I realized, and this really irritates me, I realized it's got like a covering on it, so you can't, like, look at the reflection, like you can't really see yourself in it. It's not reflective enough. That's the camera. Look at it, it's blurry. So it's got a film on it, but there's no area to like peel it off. So I don't know if that's a fault where it, like, maybe the peel was put underneath the packaging, which is plastic. No, it's got a plastic top and it's foam. So I might need to cut along here and then peel it off to use the mirror, which I don't like. I feel like for the price, that is a very poor design. It really frustrates me. But so far I'm digging the shades. So shades are good. Mirror, not so good. All right, so I'm back for day 3 of wearing my NATASHA DENONA Gold palette. And today, I do want to say I actually took off the mirror, the thing on the mirror. By doing that, I think I chipped the mirror a little bit. So what I ended up having to do was I got a knife just in the corner, and like, it was easy to get, but I didn't have to cut around it like I thought I might have to. It was just a matter of getting the corner up, which is right sort of up just behind that sort of plastic, to really peel it off and remove it. And by doing that, I think I chipped the mirror a little bit, which is annoying. So you won't be able to see on camera, but the corner of the mirror is chipped. It's just like the reflective part is chipped off. So I don't think this mirror is particularly good quality. So I'll show you a close up of the eye look that I've got on today. And I did have a bit of a struggle with it, not because of the eyeshadows so much, but because of the liner that I used originally kept peeling and being shit. So I had to put a gel liner over the top. So if I've got like chunky stuff going on, it's the liner's fault. It's not the eyeshadow's fault, but let's have a look. So I'm wearing this all over the lid. I'm wearing that on the lower lash line. Oh, I put a little bit of that on the inner corner, and I'm using this brown, and that brown. So that's what we're doing. So that really foiled one is all over the lid. You can see that it does transfer the glitter a little bit. So as I have hooded eyelids and I'm like looking down or moving, sort of migrates. So I found with this shade, it does look pretty. You can see it on the eyes there. I also put that sort of bronzy gold shade on the lower lash line, that glitter on the inner corner, and I just blend it out with mattes. So that's what it is, but I'll zoom back out and tell you what's happening. All right, so I did find that this shade here, like I said, you can see the transfer of the glitter. I also found that I had to apply it with my fingers because with a brush, it's sort of just like moist but sort of chunky glitter in the pan. So this would be best applied with a wet brush, best applied over a glitter glue, because I just wanted to see how it worked on its own over a normal primer. It didn't work well with a brush, like a flat brush. I even used like a concealer brush to really try to pick it up, but it didn't really work well. I did grab a bit on my finger and put it on and it looked gorgeous. I did find that this was so foiled that it sort of reminds me of the Huda Beauty, those sort of wet shades in the Rose Gold palette. So if you like those, you would pretty much like the finish of this because it sort of gives that very, very bold foiled look. I found that it sort of enhances the creases on my eye and it looks a bit puckered. So what I actually did was I blended it out a lot. So I actually buffed it in with my finger a little bit, and then with a fluffy brush I did blend it in. So that's possibly also why some of the glitter is up in the crease, because I really did try to blend that in because that really foiled finish. I'd prefer that sort of on the inner corner. All over the eye, it didn't look as flattering as I sort of wanted it to, but that's a shade that you might want to play around with. Might even make for a nice sort of like, yeah, foiled sort of liner or something. So it's an interesting shade. It's not an everyday shade. And a few people have asked me, how do I like this compared to the Pat McGrath palette that I did this sort of review style on the other week. And I'm going to say that this reminds me a lot. It's a different consistency and it gives a different foiled effect, but the way you need to apply it does remind me a bit of those glitters. So it does require foiling, it does require glitter glue. But the reason I don't mind this sort of texture and this sort of finish in this palette is because it's 1 out of 15 shades. Whereas in the Pat McGrath palette, it was like 5 shades were glitter, 5 out of the 10. So even though this is not going to be an everyday shimmer sort of shade for me, I like having different textures in palettes, so I didn't mind that. I do want to say that when I was using these two shades here, there is a difference between them. This definitely gave a lot more depth than this one, so I sort of used this first and then used this one to deepen it up a little bit. But I still think that these 3 shades are way too similar and you don't need all 3. So that was one that I was like, I could have used this one and it wouldn't have really mattered too much. And as long as I put a little bit of that dark brown on top, you don't really need one that's just a smidge darker. So I also noticed that I used quite a firm, it wasn't a firm blending brush, but it was like a cheaper blending brush and it did kick up a lot of products. These mattes are very, very, very soft. All right, guys, we're back for day 4, is it, of using the Natasha Denona Gold Palette. And today, I'm sure you can tell, I decided to delve into the sort of turquoise shades. So what I did, I'll just tell you what I did. I used this shade up here, just in the crease, which I think is probably my favorite crease color out of the 3 that look very similar. I don't think these are needed, and I just think that if you want a warmer one, you can always mix this with some of this mustard. If you want a little bit deeper, you can always mix it with the brown or layer it. I don't think you need these 2. I think this is sort of like taking up too much space. So, and you know, I think you end up finding one that you really like and just keep using that. And for me, it's this one here because it's got a little bit more pink tone, so it looks a little bit more natural. But what I also did was I sort of wanted to put this shade, which is called Sparks. So this, like you can see, it is just a sparkly shade. There's no base color to it. It's almost a white with a slight gold, yellowy gold shift to it. And I wanted that as the inner corner, but because it didn't have much oomph on its own, so it's not super pigmented because it's just a glitter, I decided to just on the inner half of the lid put some glitter glue. So I sort of packed that on. I'll zoom in a sec. I packed that on as my inner corner highlight. Then what I did was I went in with this teal color here, which I put sort of all over the lid almost, and I left a little patch in the outer corner, and then I used that matte Python shade in the outer corner, and sort of blended it into the crease, and I mixed it a little bit with that color as well to blend it a bit better. So I sort of did the same thing on the lower lash line where I've got that Sparks shade. I've got, what is that even called, that color? Aurora. And then I went into that matte, and they all work really nicely together. I think those two shades look beautiful together. This actually looks a lot brighter in the pan than it is on the eye. On the eye, it actually looks quite deep, and it actually looks like a sparkly version of this. So they work really beautifully together because you can use that all over the lid and then blend it out with that. I was also a bit concerned that this shade wouldn't blend very well or wouldn't pack on very well. I actually found it very easy to use. I used quite a firm brush to put it on the lid and the lower lash line, and then I actually used it with a fluffy brush and blended it into the crease. This was surprisingly quite easy to pick up and blend. So yeah, if you want to get a really darker shade, I'm sure you can pack it on even more, or if you just take the smallest amount and sort of diffuse it, you can get a lighter shade. So I actually was surprised by the pigmentation of that. But this look I quite like. It's quite bold. Let's just have a look. I think it worked really well, and I even packed a little bit more of that Sparks shade sort of over the top to sort of get a better blend of shades. But I think it's a beautiful shade. You can see that it did blend pretty well. That Sparks shade is sort of going up into the glitter is sort of going onto the brow bone a little bit. So it does do its own thing. But I think the shades work really well. If I was to make this a little bit more wearable, I'd probably have used these sort of teal turquoise colors with maybe this shimmer instead of that white one, but I wanted to use the white one and see what I thought about it. So I think it actually looks quite nice, surprisingly. All right, so that's the look close up. Hopefully you can see that there is the matte, there is that sort of shimmery teal, and then that light shade in there, and they all applied pretty well. I did think that this needs glitter glue to make it bold, because I think it's just supposed to be a bit of a topper shade on its own, but I think they work well together. I think they work well with brown eyes. I didn't put any liner because I figured it is quite bold as it is, but you can see how you can get a bit of a cool, colorful look out of this palette too. So that's how I use that. All right, so I am at look number 4 using this palette. So yesterday you saw that I did a very bold look, and I thought today I wanted to pare it down a bit, and I mainly just used this sparkly shade here all over the lid. This is like a goldy sort of sparkle that's got no base color. So if you just put it on lightly like I did today with just some primer, it just looks like a bit of a twinkle on the eyes. So I call this very wearable glitter because you can tone it down and wear it on a daily basis, and it sort of just gives a bit of brightness to the eyes, or you can put it over glitter glue or foil it to make it more intense. So I didn't mind this. I did pair it with the mustard, which I think is a weird pairing. I think the mustard probably looks a lot better paired with some gold shades, because on its own it looks a little bit jaundiced. I will zoom in so you can see in a second. And I did also put green liner because I wanted to play with this as well. So hopefully you can see that it does look quite nude. It was pretty simple. It does look a little bit sparkly, but there's no real base color to it. So it's just a really sort of subtle glitter, and you can see that sort of mustard color in the crease and down here. I also put it just on the outer corner. It does make my eyes look a little bit jaundicey, so I think, like I said, this color probably looks a bit better with golds, but I quite like this glitter. It's just a nice sort of subtle glitter. All right, guys, I'm back today with my last gold palette look. I wanted to use, I actually realized, I thought I'd used all the shades, and then I realized I hadn't used one. But I really wanted to wear a look that had the gold and the green colors, because that sort of mix really intrigues me, and I wanted to see how it sort of looks on the eye. So I've done that today, and I actually blended out the teal a lot. So I ended up making the teal look a lot more sort of olive, I would say, which is interesting. If you wanted to pack on the teal, you could make it sort of look more teal, whereas I think I sort of muted it down a lot. It was actually really easy to apply, and I actually really like the combo of the gold and the teal. So originally I went all over the lid with this one here, which is that shimmer. So it's actually a nice shade. It sort of reminds me a lot of Alchemist, but just a little bit more refined. So it looks a little bit like a traditional shimmer on the eyes instead of like a more foiled sparkly shade. So they sort of look similar on the eyes, but they have a different finish, if that makes sense. This is more of your everyday gold, whereas this is more of a sort of special intense gold. I also just applied it with a normal primer and it applied really nicely. And then I was like, oh shit, I haven't actually used this shade, which is like the gold. I'm sure this is the one that sort of inspired the palette and I haven't even used it. So I thought I'll use this one and I'll use that shade again, and I blended it out with that matte up there. It doesn't really matter, the mattes kind of are the same, but that's what I did today. So hopefully you can see the look. So it does have a lot of gold. You can see the inner portion is that first shimmer shade I talked about. It's more of a muted gold. And then I sort of packed on that middle really vibrant yellow gold. I did put this on with a brush and it was fine with the brush. It worked quite nicely, like it picked up nicely, it applied nicely. Then I blended out the teal, and I originally made it quite bold, but then I realized I want to go back in with a little bit more of that gold. So I tapped the gold on with my finger and it sort of diffused some more of that teal. So I've got the teal and the first shimmery gold without the sort of really bold sparkly gold on my lower lash line. So it's just teal and that gold, and then I've got that yellow gold mainly on the lid, and you can see it's creeping up a little bit into the crease because it is quite a sparkly look, but I really like the color combo. So yeah, if you wanted to intensify the teal you could, but I sort of blended it to make it look a bit more like old gold, which I didn't hate. So yeah, it's a bit of an extreme look, but you can see how the teals can work with the golds in the palette, which I liked. And I believe I'm ready to tell you what I think about this palette overall. So using this for how many days? 5, 6 days? I don't know. So I use this over sort of 2 weeks because I'm doing my 1 month, one palette. I'm sort of alternating palettes that I'm using, but I don't mind this palette. Now, I've had a lot of people ask me, do I like it more than the Pat McGrath palette, which I did a review on the other week. And I'm going to say they're very different. So I like the mattes in the Pat McGrath palette more than these mattes. I think those mattes were really impressive. I really liked that foil red shade. And I liked some of the tones of that palette. The glitters were all right, but once again, they were sort of, they were like the equivalent of using this glitter all the time. I just found it like too much. So that was my sort of issue. I found that for the price of the Pat McGrath one, it was less wearable than I wanted it to be. So that was my issue with that palette. So yeah, my issue with that wasn't so much the actual quality of it. It was more the finish of it for the price and how wearable it was in my life, which wasn't super wearable. So I think there were some pros and cons to that. Whereas this one, for me, I can see myself reaching for more often because the shades and the variety of finishes, I can actually work into everyday looks a lot more. But I do think that this color palette is a lot more restrictive. So there are a lot of similar shades going on. I know it's a gold palette. If you like gold, you'll like the golds. But I do think that a lot of the shades look very similar. So even though I find this more wearable, I think that this is not a perfect palette, if that makes sense. I think there's some missed opportunities going on in here. So the formula of the mattes are fine. I actually particularly like this shade down here, which is a different formula. It's almost like a baked mousse sort of formula, but it is surprisingly pigmented. You could even get this and use it as a liner if you wanted to. It sort of grips to the skin really well, but it also, you can apply it in a fluffy with a fluffy brush and blend it out. It's actually a really, really beautiful formula. So I liked this. These ones were fine. They weren't horrible, they weren't great. And I think my biggest issue with the mattes is that I see there's being like 3 colors here. You've got a mustard, a dark brown, which is actually really versatile and beautiful, and then this sort of transition color. You did not need these 2. They are so similar. This is a little bit warmer than that one. This is a little bit darker than that one, but you really don't need the 3. I think it's a waste of space. Now, in saying that, they are all very wearable, and I know that a lot of people love transition shades and use them all the time. I do too. So they are not impractical. They just don't all need to be there. There could have been different undertones. I would have loved to have seen maybe a cooler tone transition color. So that one being more like this shade, like a little bit cooler of a brown. And I would have honestly have loved to have seen them go a little bit further into this greeny tone and have like a swampy green shade. I know that sounds a bit bizarre, but I think swampy green shades work really well with golds. And you can see that they're sort of getting into that swampy green with these sort of duochrome shades. So I would have loved to have seen a swampy green just to add a bit of variety to like a crease. Even they could have even put a really deep sort of color as well. I know that's pretty dark, but maybe even deeper. So there are missed opportunities with the mattes, in my opinion. Now, when it comes to the shimmers, I think there are some really nice quality formulas here, and there are some that are like, eh. So for example, I really love their standard shimmer. This one is just a standard one. This one is a weird sort of, it reminds me, the formula is a shimmery version of this. So it looks like that baked gel formula, and it actually applies quite nicely on the eye. It's not super buttery to apply, but it does grip really nicely to the eye. And then there are so many different types of shades here, so it's sort of impossible just to summarize them all. You've got like a wet, more chunkier glitter that is best applied with your finger. You have more of a similar shade to this, but it's a little bit more, once again, sparkly. You have a true sort of sparkly yellow gold. You have a duochrome. This is more like a topper shade, which is, it's like a transformer shade. It's quite pretty. Then you have two glitters. These are pressed glitters without a base color. What I do like about that is it means that it can be a topper, but it can also provide a really sort of subtle glittery look. So I did use this one all over the lid just the other day, and it was a really nice sort of everyday glitter because they're very finely milled glitter particles. But one thing that I don't like about these is that you can't really build them up to make a really bold inner corner highlighter. So I feel like one thing that this palette is also missing is sort of a lighter shimmery shade and even a lighter matte shade. So I sort of like looking at palettes and seeing a variety of light to deep, and this sort of has one light shade, but if you take that out, they're all mid-tone to deep. So I do like these shimmery shades as inner corner highlighters, but if you're wearing one of these shades all over the lid and you want something to pop on the inner corner, you want a lighter shade, and the lightest shades in here are either mattes or glitters, and the glitters don't really give you that highlight pop. So I would have liked to have seen one of these gold shades replaced with maybe more of a gold champagne, really intense shimmer. That would have been nice to just add some balance to this. And once again, I think there are so many golds here, and even though they all have different finishes and they all sort of are different if you compare them in swatches, on the eye, they actually look relatively similar. They all require different techniques to apply them, but I feel like, you know, you don't need this, and this. They all sort of give a similar effect. So I would have liked one of the golds to be replaced with more of an old gold. So I'll sort of put a photo on the screen of what I mean by old gold, but I feel like those sort of olivey gold shades work really well with other golds, and if you did have a swamp sort of color in there, you'd have a lot more variety. So you could have green looks, teal looks, brown looks, and gold looks. And I think, yeah, I just think as it is, there are some repeating shades, and even though they, like I said, they do have different finishes, I think on the eye, unless you get really up close and go, oh, that one has gold flecks in it and that one's slightly different, they look very similar on the eye. Now, the things that I do like about this is I think this is a very wearable palette, and it does have a variety of finishes, which is good because you can sort of make a basic look, you can make a work look, you can make a night look, you can make a really highly metallic, sparkly, foiled look, or you can go smoky with the sort of teals. So I do like the variety of finishes in this, and if you do like golds and browns, you will like this palette. It's quite warm, but it's got some coolness to it as well. And I actually think the gems of this palette are probably the teal colors. And it's not so much that the quality is amazing. I think this quality is really nice. That one is, that's fine. But I feel like the pairing of the gold and the teal are actually really, really beautiful, and it makes this a little bit less boring. So if you took that away, you're like, that is a boring palette. If you put those in, you actually can create some really, really beautiful shades, and they will be some of my most reached for shades, especially this matte one down here because it's really, really pretty. So if you were like concerned about buying this because of the quality, I think it applies very nicely. I do think some of the shimmer shades do require a little bit of fiddling around with to find the best way to apply it, because there are so many different formulas in here that you sort of need to learn how to use the different formulas in different ways, if that makes sense. So you can't just go, oh, I'm going to use this shimmery brown just normally and then expect to use that the same way. They are very, very different. So you sort of need to play with them and see how best each shade works. But they do all work pretty nicely. My only issue is the redundancy of some of the shades and the fact that even though there are differences in finishes with some of the golds, on the eye they look very, very similar. So yeah, if you love golds and you love these sort of shades, which I really do, this might be one that you might want to check out. I am happy that I have it. I will happily reach for it. And I think, yeah, there were missed opportunities with making more variety in here. Like, I think they should have gone a little bit more into the greens, and they should have, you know, maybe put a few more lighter shades, a few more true deep shades. But if you do like browns and golds like I do, and you sort of want a palette where you can create different finishes, different day to night looks, this is a palette that you can easily do it. So if you don't like browns and golds, I would not recommend checking this palette out. But if you do, you can get variety of looks in it. It's just that, you know, they're sort of around browns and golds, which is what it is. All right, guys, hopefully you found that moderately interesting. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.